Well, let's get started by checking out all of the fun stuff I've got. As usual, I got my little helper out in the garage with me, making sure that I don't screw up anything too terribly. And now, first thing coming out of the box is the Brembo master cylinder. This is the RCS 15. Comes with brake switch light, brake light switch. I got just a cheap Brembo reservoir knockoff from Amazon. It's nice and cheap. Seems like it will do the trick. Even comes with, can't see it on camera, but it even comes with a fake Brembo logo. So, yay. Next up, this beautifully packaged Brembo caliper from Spears Racing. For some reason they put candy in the box. I'm not sure why. But at any rate, comes complete with the pads, so that's nice. And then in order to mount the caliper, we need the mounting bracket. Spears makes one here. And of course we got brake lines, steel braided brake lines from Spiegler. One thing to know about your brake lines is that Kawasaki uses 1.25 millimeter thread pitch, and Brembo does not. They use 1.0. So make sure that you order the 1.0 size when you get your brake lines, or you gotta get them separate like I did. One for the top, one for the bottom. Yay. And of course, Brembo 5.5 millimeter full float rotor. You can't hear it because I got rid of the audio, but it's floating. Yay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the brake fluid from the system. Start by opening the brake fluid reservoir. I've got the bike mounted up in a front stand. You're probably better off just having it on the ground for this. That way when you can have it nice and level when you open the top. It was just about spilling over when I took it off, so just be careful of that. Have plenty of rags ready. Brake fluid is really corrosive. You don't want it landing on anything. If it does, you want to clean it up right away. This would probably be a good time to mention that it'd be good to have gloves on. Don't do my bad habits and have gloved hands. You might want to have shoes on too. Who knows? So we're just going to suck that fluid out of the reservoir. These are just cheap little syringes you can get off Amazon. Nice and easy. And then make sure you got a catch can so you can get all your fluid. Alright, so then we're going to go ahead and take the banjo bolt off the bottom of the system. Be ready to catch any brake fluid as it comes out. But since the top is not open, the fluid should remain mostly inside the hose. You might get some dribbles from the end, but for the most part, you shouldn't get a big mess. And then make sure you have a catch can below it to catch the fluid, so that when you do empty the break the seal at the top of the hose, that the fluid has a place to go. So now when we loosen the banjo bolt on the top, it's going to allow air to come in the top, which will let the fluid come out through the brake line. like as always, just want to make sure you got plenty of rags on hand to catch any brake fluid that might drip. You don't want drips on anything. So try to catch it all. Whatever you don't catch, make sure you clean up right away. Wipe it up with a rag, clean it with some soap and water if you got it on something you definitely don't want getting corroded. And it's probably a good idea before you start working on brakes to hit it with some brake cleaner. I don't show me using brake cleaner in this video, but yeah, this stuff's pretty nasty. Get brake dust all over everything. Hit it with some brake cleaner, get that cleaned up a bit. Go ahead and take the mounting bolts off the stock master cylinder and reservoir. Once you have that off, you're going to have to take off the brake light switch, which is on the bottom of the reservoir. I suppose you can do it ahead of time, but it's just a lot easier to reach if you wait till you take it off. Pretty simple, just a Phillips screwdriver. And then I'm not going to be reusing the brake light switch. This is going to be a track bike. So for the time being, I basically just zip tied it to the wiring harness out of the way. So I don't have to deal with it. That may very well get removed later. We'll see. My helper is taking a little break right now. Been a rough day of wrenching, so she got to get her rest. Next up, we're going to take off the brake caliper. Pretty simple. A couple sockets, comes right off. If there's any fluid in the caliper, you want to catch it in the catch can. And as always, make sure you got plenty of rags handy. Next, we'll take the front tire off so we can access the brake rotor. We're going to change that as well. Nothing terribly fancy about this. You need a socket and a wrench, or 2 sockets, whatever you like best, and take it off. Once the wheel's off, we'll go ahead and take the rotor off. So these bolts in the rotor, they have permanent thread locker on them, and they are tight. They are stiff. So make sure you're being careful not to strip out the bolts when you're taking them off. And it's going to take some elbow grease. You got to put some muscle into it. If you got a way to hold this tire secure, all the better, or the wheel secure, all the better. But you can see I'm just doing it here on a flat table, not much room. It's not that difficult. Just take your time and prepare to use some force. Once you got the bolts out, probably a good idea to clean the old thread locker off the bolts and out of the thread holes, and then that'll make it a little easier to get the new one, or get them back in once you got the new rotor on. One trick to clean out the threads is actually use the bolts, run the bolts through there, and that'll help push the thread locker out down the bottom. I just use a little pick here to help loosen up the threads. And then, yeah, we're going to put the new rotor on. So when you put the bolts on, you're going to be using red thread locker, permanent thread locker on them. These are bolts you obviously don't want coming out. And you don't really plan to be taking them out a whole lot, so permanent thread locker. You don't really need a whole lot, just get some around the end of the thread, and that'll do the trick.
Perfect, 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 perfect.
Before we put the tire back on, we'll go ahead and get the caliper installed. And like I said before, you're going to need an adapter bracket in order to mount this Brembo caliper. I've got the one from Spiegler here. So we're going to attach the adapter to the caliper first, and then we'll put the caliper in, and then we'll torque everything up.
Perfect, perfect, perfect.
caliper torqued on, we'll go ahead and take out the old rubber hose and put in the new steel braided lines. The rubber hose has some grommets there on it that go into essentially in clamps on the bike. So we're just going to take the old hose and use that to get the grommets in the right place and make sure that our banjo bolts are oriented in approximately the right direction to get them plumb to the master cylinder and the caliper.
Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
Cody.
Perfect. Perfect. Perfect.
Cody.
Now with the caliper all set up, we'll just go ahead and put the front wheel back on with the new brake rotor. As you can see, I've got pit bull stands and I've got that pit bull tire changer thing, which makes it a heck of a lot easier to get tires on by yourself. It's just highly recommended. You could use a board, I guess, but it's just really slick. You just turn the wheel, it gets it to the right place. You stick the axle in. You can't beat it. At any rate, get them on and then torque it up. I have pulled the tire on and off this thing so many times, I just use the internal torque meter at this point. And then once you got them torqued up, of course, put the cotter pin back in. And then lastly, we're going to put the new master cylinder on. And once we get that on and attached to the brake line, that's it. Then it's just adding brake fluid and bleeding. Always a fun chore. There's plenty of videos out there on how to bleed your brakes. I may do one at some point, but I doubt it. There's plenty out there. It's tedious, but it's not difficult. One thing to keep in mind as you're attaching the master cylinder and getting the brake line back on there, two things you don't want to have happen. You don't want to have your brake lever contacting anything, so make sure that you can rotate the handlebars fully counterclockwise and clockwise without that handle touching anything. And two, you don't want the brake line interfering with your steering. So again, make sure you can rotate the handlebars fully clockwise, fully counterclockwise, without that brake line coming into contact with anything. Now when it came to the generic reservoir I got, they had a, I don't know, this funny little mount. It's very thick and stiff, and just doesn't allow for any flexibility and orientation of the reservoir when you attach it. So I got rid of it. I went ahead and ordered the Ladybird bracket from Curvy Girl, which I think works a lot nicer. You can get that reservoir wherever you want it exactly. And that's pretty much it. That's the brake install. Thanks for watching.